Hello, welcome back to City Planner Plays City Tips, where I review your cities and give you tips on how to improve them. Today we are looking at Marstannum's city of Quinnville. This is a city that was built on the Azure Gulf map that came with the Sunset Harbor DLC. It started as a vanilla build and then added mods over time. The skill level of this builder, self-identified, is intermediate, although I am a little dubious about that, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. So there is a story associated with this build, and I want to give that right now. According to the local legend, Quinnville was founded when Arthur Quinn won the rights to an old ranch in a card game during the Reconstruction era in the mid to late 1800s. What was once a sleepy farming and forestry town has since blossomed into a major tourist destination with world-class parks and top-notch accommodations straddling a river delta on the shores of the Gulf of Mexico. The Delta Diamond, as it is sometimes known, is supplemented by a healthy tech and industrial sector, highlighted by the cutting-edge Delta Eastern Agritech Agricultural Research Center, and fed by Quinnville Technical Institute. So this is a really unique story, and we're going to see this story play out in the way that the city was built. But before we get into that, let's talk about what this series is. It's an opportunity to have me review your city and give you tips on how to improve. It's an opportunity for the community to share ideas rather than just look at my builds, and a chance to get a City Planner City score. What this isn't is an opportunity for negativity or roasting, and remember, I'm here to help, not poke fun at you or make you feel uncomfortable. This should be a relaxing experience where you get constructive feedback that you can use to improve your city. And let's also talk about how I score the cities. We look at the map, the city layout and roadway configuration, land use planning, transit, city services, unique features, aesthetics, and then we give you an overall City Planner City score. But before we get started, I want to give a brief shout out to today's video sponsor. I've teamed up with Apex Gaming PCs to design my own custom computer perfect for playing games like Cities Skylines and Timberborn. Check them out by looking at the link in the video description. So first of all, let's take a look at the map. So as I mentioned earlier, this was built on the Azure Gulf map that came with the Sunset Harbor DLC. And it's a very interesting map, particularly for a map that comes out with the base games. First of all, we have rivers all throughout here, and they're really delicate, which is unique for the base game. I feel like a lot of the base game maps have rivers that are really, really carved out, and this feels natural. I love how detailed and small, and really these rivers feel natural, and that's what I really like about it. The rivers tell a story about their founding and their forming, and the geography of the area. They're cutting into this mountainside, and it feels very, very good. But it's not just rivers. Like I mentioned, we have these mountains back here. We also have a number of peninsulas. We got peninsula here, a little island here, island. So there's a lot going on, and those provide unique constraints. There are opportunities for small towns. If you had the 81 tile mod, you could create towns around these lakes that are forming up here. There's a bunch of unique little assets on this map like this, really making this a very interesting map. So the one thing I don't like about this map is that there is a bit of a shipping path error. So I think I can point this out. So if you look at this, because of the way these islands work out, what you're seeing is that all of these ships are coming in right here, and it's causing a traffic jam. And that is a problem with the map. If we look and dive in, you can see that it's just not very deep right here. And as a result, the ships are never going to go in here. They're going to go in this deep area, and you're going to see a conga line of ships. So that's not great. That funneling is not good, and that's a problem with the map. But overall, I do love this map, and as a result, we're going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. So next up, we're going to take a look at the city configuration and roadway layout. And truthfully, we're going to spend a lot of time here. First of all, the configuration of the city makes a ton of sense. So this is the most valuable land in the entire community. It is this peninsula. It's got sandy shores on both sides. And as a result, what you'll see that the builder has done is only really allow density to occur on this strip of land that would be incredibly valuable. There's a little bit of density here, but there's a height restriction, which I love. That's one thing. You could have a couple of town centers. I'm thinking like, or places of density like, Buckhead in Atlanta. That'd be one way to take this, but I appreciate that they've concentrated all of the density along this area. This is a constrained environment, and that's when density occurs. When there's no place to build out, you start to build up. So it makes a ton of sense to me. There are also a number of other great things that have been done here. So the number one thing, and it's difficult to highlight without just zooming in, is that there is an extensive bike network throughout this entire community and assets that have been worked in to take advantage of that. Right here, for instance, we've got this really interesting off-street protected bike lane that goes along this entire road here. This network is extensive. It is everywhere. You can see it right there. It crosses over here, loops around. Biking is a viable option in this city. You don't need a car. It's just something that you could do if you want to. So I really, really, really appreciate that. So one thing that I noticed is that this builder is gone full engineer. So that's something to keep in mind. So one of the reasons you'll see that my build is slowing down a little bit, that is because of the level of traffic AI that is happening here. And you'll see intersections like this one. First of all, let's talk about the roadway layout for a second. So this is an arterial, it's the highway, it loops around the city, doesn't go through it. I do appreciate that. However, there is an expressway. So right here is an expressway, and it comes up and it serves this industrial area. So as a result, what you see is heavy utilization of this road and traffic that's dipping down. So to resolve this, what has occurred is we've got some traffic manager things going on. So we got some time traffic lights. So that's fine. We can take a look at that. You can see that they've been configured. There is a six stage setup here. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of traffic going through here. So for what they've done a good job of optimizing, but I think there's more that could be done. One of the reasons you're seeing the traffic flow be what it is you sometimes get backups at these two-time traffic lights. And a part of that is you're funneling a lot. And that's kind of happening throughout the city. It's one of the things I noticed is that there's a lot of funneling occurring. So I like what is going on here, and it's really custom and it's really beautifully done, but there are a couple of issues. So right here, for instance, you've got a dual left-hand turn lane, but there wasn't even one vehicle queuing in there. So I would think about this and wonder, is this really the best use of all of these lanes? Or would it be better to actually not have a dual left-hand turn lane and maybe have a dual right slip lane? And that might be a better use of the constrained space that you have. The other thing, over here, you have this slip lane that just kind of goes directly into this through lane rather than giving an acceleration lane and a place to merge. So in reality, that's what I'd expect to see, is that this slip lane would continue up and you'd have a little bit of space to merge in. And we're not controlling the movements here. So you see that they're merging into the leftmost lane. So I would go into here, control that a bit. It might improve things. And even here, you see that there hasn't been a lot of junction control. And if you're going to create a timed intersection like this, it's almost better to just tell the AI exactly what you're thinking. And part of the reason for that is it will make some pretty illogical decisions if you don't. So you tell it what you want and it'll do what you want. So as I come through and do some of this stuff, you're going to take away some of that unpredictability that you would see with the simulation. Here's another one right here, actually. You got this dual left, but they're going into whatever lane they want to, and that causes backup for really no apparent reason. It's not the builder's fault, it's the fault of the game AI deciding that it can turn wherever it wants. You're seeing the same thing here. They're choosing either lane. Maybe that's desirable, but maybe not. So I would go through, and if you're going to really go full traffic engineer, make sure that you are really coming through here and controlling these. Otherwise, the game's going to do whatever it wants. So this is a little bit better. Even here, you got a dual left-hand turn lane. Is that really necessary? Or do we want to have a dedicated right-hand turn lane? So this through movement, which I would anticipate is the dominant movement. Let's check this out. So there's a lot going left, but really this through movement is also very important. So this is interesting. Now that I look at this, you see that right here, this is another thing I noticed. So this collector was likely at one point a local road, was upgraded to be a collector because vehicles weren't taking the collector that was planned. Now, part of that is we've got signalization right here. So assuming that there's no signalization on this one, which it doesn't look like there is, this is by far going to be the more attractive route. Because why would you want to stop at a light when you could just breeze through here as quickly as possible? So that's what they're doing. So at the risk of mixing vanilla junctions with traffic manager, I am going to just swap some of these. And you see a signal there. That one makes sense. Just kind of going through here and cleaning up some of these lights, prioritizing the collectors would do a world of wonder. And you could certainly set the priority. There's a lot going on here, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be very careful and set this all by hand. And this will it'll give some more parity here. So another concern with this particular interchange is that when you're taking a look, this stop distance here is not good. I would anticipate that there would be more control here. So whether that's right in, right out only, a pork chop is what we would call it, or this is severed, or potentially turn into a one-way couplet with these two, so that rather than being able to come through and cut here, that would be very helpful. So I'm curious what that has done. That little bit of traffic management took a little bit of pressure off here. So that's a good thing. But there's a lot more that could be done. One of the things you notice when you come into your traffic view is that we have the Posh Mall over here, and that's a big trip generator. And I'm not sure that with transit, we're covering it all that well. It's a bus route. We'll get into traffic or transit more a little bit later. But with a use like this over here, you're going to have a lot of demand from the entire region to get here. So there are a few things you could do. I see there's this bridge here, and I'd be very curious if we were to, obviously this bridge is not in a place that is very conducive to this right now, but if we were to have some sort of, if we were to interchange this, I bet you that this would help our traffic quite a bit. So we would need to do this on both sides. You don't need to have all of the accesses, so all of the movements. So I think that is something that people will, trap people will fall into is, you know, I'm building this, so I must have every single movement. That's not true. You don't have to have every single movement. You could just have a way to get up here and a way to get off and call it a day. It's not convenient. People don't like it, but it happens. So I wouldn't get too overly concerned about that. But here's what I'm thinking. We come through here, again, we go into traffic manager. We say that you can't, actually, we could probably leave it just like this. And I'm guaranteeing that this would resolve a great deal of the pressure that you're seeing at this interchange. So if we take a look at this, what this is going to ultimately do, and obviously I'd like to see this mirrored, maybe straighten this out. It might mean that you gotta come in here, change this road, and then change your bike prioritization, modify that a bit. But this should take some pressure off this interchange rather than forcing everyone in this neighborhood to take really one of the few bridges across this river here. It would give the ability to clear things up a bit. The other thing that could be done is another interchange over here. It doesn't even need to be fancy. So this road here, which is Gulf Shores Drive, is prioritized rather than Silver Street, which is the collector. Rather than seeing this tee in, if you were to extend this movement through here and then have a separate bike path bridge and then have an interchange up here, I assume that would fix quite a bit with the traffic that we're seeing. This is something that the builder brought up, that they just can't seem to get the traffic any higher. And you know, to me, that is just 100% a function of funneling. So let's just say we come through here, and this is not a good configuration. Truthfully, I think that this probably would need to come out here. It might be some mixture of tunneling or lowering the highway. In fact, let's just do it right. Let's just lower this. Then I'm going to come through here and I'm going to bridge this up. And then we'll come into our multi-tool and we'll slope this really well. And then because it's a highway, we'll feather it out just a bit along the edges. Now we at least have something that we can work with a little bit more. Clearly, we would want to do a little bit more with the sloping. Pick your high slope. Slope this way. And now we can create our bridge. And then just some simple ramps to come up here. So we will add some ramps. This is obviously not beautiful. The main point of this is to demonstrate something, and we will demonstrate that in just a second. I'm going to clean it up just a little bit because I can't let this go. Okay, so this is a pretty ugly interchange. I'm not going to spend much more time on it. It's not really worth it. I'm just demonstrating a point here. Although, maybe a little bit. No, I'll stop. I will stop. It's not going to be great looking because of the lack of time I'm putting into it. But what I want to demonstrate is that if we come over here and we look at this, that is a ton of traffic coming off the highway and entering this portion of the city. So to me, that's a demonstration that really we're missing an interchange here. So, and there's another area just like this. If we look at our traffic, not increasing a ton just yet, but I think it'll get better with a couple more things that we do. So another thing here is that so this is the expressway. We have an intersection that basically mirrors the highway. So just keeping that in mind, I don't know how much I love that because it just provides an alternate path for freight traffic. And if we look at this, that's what it is. It's freight traffic coming off here. It might be nice to get them onto a higher capacity road rather than driving through neighborhoods. A lot of traffic here, but you see that it's not a lot of local traffic. It's a lot of through traffic. And that's because we've provided another option that looks more attractive. So that's potentially problematic. Maybe you want to get them onto the highway. So a way to fix this would be, you know, is this necessary, this junction, or could we overpass it? Have this be the local movement? Same thing here. There's a collector where we have a junction here. Maybe we just make this a formal expressway, sink this down a little bit, send this right over the top. Same thing with this one. Keep this one at grade. Maybe add another collector connection through here. And if this were sunken, you wouldn't have to have such long bridge spans. So it's nice to have this like this, but maybe you needed to just clean it up a little bit in that particular way. So another issue that I've seen with the configuration has to do a little bit with some of the choices that have been made around the rail network. So we've got this cargo train terminal, and there's a lot of cargo train terminals throughout the map. One of the things that the creator tried to do is make sure that the freight traffic is on the trains, which is great. However, what you're seeing is that there's a mixing between freight and passenger traffic and some other small issues like this one. So right here, we've got a local road that was upgraded at one point to be a collector. So you got a freeway interchange here coming into this roundabout. I love that. There's a slip lane. That's fine. Not overly concerned about that. I don't know that this is super necessary, but it's there. But my bigger concern is that this is still a collector. We've got a lot of uses loading onto it. So we've got a police headquarters, and then we can deal with this. We can't deal with this. The cargo train terminal is inappropriately placed. You're drawing freight traffic into a neighborhood, and rather than doing something separate where, you know, it's separating this traffic, this destination, this trip generator from the collector, it's forcing it to load onto this. So I would just get rid of this, and we're going to see traffic generally improve quite a bit. and you see it immediately. Now the traffic is moving in this area. So let's look at this. We're up to 77. I think we can get it to 80. Just a couple more things to do. So right here, we can take a look again. And again, looking back at our traffic routes, if we click on this collector, you can see there's a lot of traffic coming through here. Not concerned about the private vehicles. I am concerned more about the public transport, cargo, and trucks. And look at this. You've got some trucks deciding to use this as a cut through. And this movement in particular, I find to be offensive. So we're going to take care of that. And one of the things that you see is that this movement has been not just allowed, but it's been prioritized. So in an area that's heavily pedestrianized, where we have a lot of transit things going on, we've got some uses here that spawn a bunch of trips. This is not a great solution in my mind, but what makes it worse is that we're facilitating and prioritizing that truck movement through here. So if we were to take this, remove that priority, and then come through here, and I believe this is a traffic managed traffic light. It is. So we're gonna stop this. We're gonna remove this and prioritize that through movement. We wanna keep our heavy vehicles on this collector, coming to this collector. So right here, another one, and that one's vanilla, interestingly. So now we have this movement prioritized. That said, we could go a step further. We have traffic manager. And what I'd love to do is actually ban some of these movements through here. So let's click on this. We'll hit our shift button, and let's not allow these freight movements through here at all. And with that, what we're going to ultimately end up seeing is now they are forced to go through this, and that's totally rational. You will see freight restrictions on some roads. Look at this. All of these freight vehicles that we're going to turn right are now going straight. The ones that are on here are leaving. This road's cleaned up. Our traffic flow is up to 78. So it's just small tweaks around the edges here. And again, we've got another high trip generating use right on this arterial. You can certainly do that. You know, another concern. And there's a concentration of these sorts of things that can really have an impact on your traffic flow. So another concern that I would have. That said, we're talking about the city layout. There's lots of trip generating uses that aren't backing things up, and that's because of transit, which we'll get into in a little while. And in general, when I say backup, there's not really backup. There's heavy traffic volumes in certain areas, but what you'll see is that there really isn't backup. So I don't know that I'd be super concerned about that. If this were backing up into the oblivion and you know, causing significant delays or just total stoppage, that's a problem. And I wouldn't be super excited about that. But you don't really see that here. You just kind of see slowdown. And then you see things like this, which I think are just outstanding. Super creative. Look at this. So this is a freight terminal. And what they're doing is separating this off. You can either proceed through to this industrial area. And where does that go? Saw it before. Okay, so this tunnel comes over here and gives you access to this utility area, and the service district makes a ton of sense. So you're able to come off the highway, either go to this freight terminal, drop your things off, or proceed through. Really creative. It's just functioning so well. So you could drop your things off, come back on the highway. I love that. I really, really, really love that. So it's kind of a mixed bag here in terms of traffic flow, but I think for the most part, you know, when you play traffic engineer and you do traffic engineer things, you're going to have a more complicated network that fits some places. It's just, that's when I think of the South or the Western US, that is what they do. That is how they maximize their traffic flow. They add lots of lanes, and it's kind of a game of whack-a-mole suppressing the traffic. You got the same, look at this, but this is going to clear. So I'm okay with it. Lots of work that they've done to make this function well. And if we see this, I'm curious. Let's speed this up for a second. I want to see if this clears out entirely. Well, we get it here. There's certainly some optimization that could occur. But for the most part, if you're going to do this level of traffic management, you're going to increase the complexity. You're going to expect this. Roadway hierarchy has been maintained for the most part, so I'm very, very pleased with that. Just a couple of tweaks around the edges, and you could really see things improve. Oh, we're dipping back down. 77, 78, 76. It's hopping around there. We just need more prioritization in some of these areas and really rethinking some of these. I think dropping this down and not allowing this movement is probably for the best when in tandem with this interchange. So lots of really, really interesting things here. Very complex network, and I like it. Very good city layout. I'm going to give this a score of 4 out of 5. Okay, so hand in hand with city layout and roadway configuration is land use planning. So lots of really admirable stuff here. So if we pop in and take a look at this, I will get that fiery bird off the screen so we don't have to look at that. You'll see that in the downtown area, a good mix of uses, commercial, office, residential, side by side. Really, really like this. And it's like this throughout the entire city. And you see that there are pockets of lower density residential, really well thought out. And I appreciate what they've done here. That said, there are a couple of issues. And part of this is that I think things are just kind of jammed together in ways that are harming the traffic network of the city and maybe aren't super realistic. So this is an area I want to highlight in particular. So we've got this lumber company right here, this ore industry area right here, and then we've got lots and lots of industry jammed through here. And the result of this is heavy traffic right in this residential neighborhood. I would love to see all of this spread out just a bit. You know, we have this lumber industry. Why don't we give it its own area? Same thing with this minerals area. We could spread this stuff out a little bit. So one of the things that the creator actually mentioned in their story is that they started this out when I started Verde Beach. Started out entirely vanilla, and I think that their skill has grown as the build has gone on, and this is something that I think is evident when you look at some of these other areas. This though is questionable, and I would look at redeveloping portions of this to spread things out a little bit. So that to me is one issue. The other thing is they've done such a great job with some of the parks. This is something I'm guilty of too. I don't separate my land uses at all, sometimes. So I think that giving a little bit of breathing room to some of these, not in the downtown core, but as you get out here and you start to get a little further back, we've got a neighborhood here where the houses are still side by side. I'd love to see these have a little bit more space, because that's something you would see when you look at zoning. Generally, the setbacks, that's how far the building is from the road or the side of the lot, and the building and the lot sizes themselves will increase. Unless you get into like a new urbanist neighborhood or some of the newer suburban neighborhoods where they are really jammed in there, you'll see that happen. So I'd love to see that for a more realistic development pattern out here. So that said, it's very good. And what you see is that there's a logical separation. A couple areas though, like right here, we've got service center district where we got lots of industrial things and utility things going on with residential right there. I just don't think we would see that. And over here as well, we've got some utility buildings just kind of placed in this area where there is a really nice animal sanctuary. We've also got another one of these cargo terminals right next to what is the same thing, essentially. So I would give a little bit more thought to that. For land use planning though, generally a good job. I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5. Next up is transit planning, and there's a lot going on here. I'm really excited to show you this. Take a look at this utilization. This might be the highest number of tourist trips I've ever seen in a transit system. And part of the reason for that is if we zoom out, let's see if I can turn off some of this stuff. Right here, you can see that this entire community is blanketed in transit. So it's not just that you can get around this city by biking. You can get around this city by transit, no problem. You don't need a car. That is your choice. And it's reflecting itself in the transit utilization. So if we take a look at the subway in and of itself or alone, what you'll see is that they've used custom vehicles. Now these vehicles, they have right here. We'll look at the Ridgeline in Fort Quinn, huge capacity. So that's one of the benefits of vehicles CCP. You bring these in, and you can actually have some vehicles that have higher capacity and clear some of these stops. What that does is make your transit system much more effective. Without a transit system this effective, I kind of shudder to think about what would happen with that expressway, because I think it would totally slow down. But that's what cities do. If they don't want to keep investing in roads, they invest in transit and bikes and pedestrian amenities, and you're able to disperse some of that a bit. And that's what you're seeing happen right now in the US in particular, as we look to get people out of their cars, invest in other modes of transportation, get people out of their car, and you're going to see some really interesting things happen in terms of your traffic flow. You won't have to invest in widenings forever. So one of the things, if we look through here, there's just a logical connection for most of these modes. I'd love to see maybe a little bit more interaction between some of the modes in certain places. Like right here, we've got a bus route that doesn't really interface at all with this. You have to walk a couple blocks across a collector. Not ideal, potentially two, depending on where you're going. And this route right here is kind of just circulating through. That's fine. I'd love to see those connections be made though. One of the things that the creator mentioned as a potential issue is their ferry network. They aren't sure why their utilization is as poor as it is. So if we go into here, we'll see that the top route has 36 passengers. And when we look at what this route is, it's this blue line. It's basically a loop. It's mirroring this bridge. It's really tourism. If I were a tourist, that's what I would do. I'd take the boat just for fun. Truthfully, I think that the utilization is poor because the rest of the transit network is so good, and the roadway network is more convenient. It's also a lack of origins and destinations being met. So if I were pinging back and forth, I'm not going to take this unless I'm a tourist at one of these hotels going to one of these shops or this arcade. And truthfully, when we take a look at our land uses here, you're connecting two commercial areas. So those are two destinations getting linked together. Not going to be a ton of demand for that. If there were residential or hotels on either side of this, I could see utilization jumping. But without that, it's just a mismatch of origins and destinations. And you kind of see that throughout the ferry network. There's really no compelling reason to take it. So as a result, that's something that I would get rid of. The rest of the networks, the bus network, they've done a really good job of mirroring routes. There's a couple places where maybe we could clean things up just a little bit, but there are circulator routes, and then there's routes that you would expect to not be circulator routes that are kind of going back and forth, and that's completely fine as well. So very well covered network. The entire city is very well covered, and I really appreciate that. I would remove the ferries personally. I think that they're not an effective use of the city's resources. But beyond that, excellent transit network, amazing utilization for both residents and tourists. I give this a 4.5 out of 5. So next we're going to take a look at the city services, and there is absolutely outstanding coverage of everything. Okay, so let's start out with our electricity, and what you see here is that we've got plenty of overhead and availability, which will allow our city to continue to grow. I'm going to turn off a couple of these things so we can really dive into this. So it's well covered there. When we look at our water, same thing. And when we look at our water pipes, for the most part, underneath the road where they belong, I really, really like that. It's great, well blanketed, well thought out network and coverage. Then we can look at some of our other services. We look at our healthcare, and check this out, 87% average health. That is amazing. Death care capacity is fantastic. There are some full cemeteries, which I know trigger some people. I'm not one of those people. Zardes has converted me. If you want a full looking cemetery, you leave it full. Childcare. Wow. Every child here is living forever. It's amazing. And then if we look over here at our elder care, average lifespan 81 years. You know, if we were being nitpicky, you could certainly try to improve that, but look at this coverage. Absolutely outstanding. Fire protection. This builder does have the natural disasters DLC enabled, and you can tell because they've covered the city in so much fire protection. It is outstanding. When we come in here and look at our natural disasters, look at this. They have shelters. We'll close that up. They have shelters, and these shelters have routes. So it's not full coverage of the city, but it's pretty outstanding. Look at this. Routes coming in here. We could do a little bit better, but most of the time people don't even think about this. So that's great. Police crime rate, I'd love to see it a little bit lower, but that's pretty darn good. For education, excellent elementary coverage, excellent high school coverage. University coverage is pretty darn good, but this is what's really outstanding. Look at this. They brought in some custom library assets, and as a result, have been able to put little neighborhood public libraries all over the place, blanket the entire city in coverage, with the exception of a couple of areas. Not a huge deal. This is one of the best library systems I've seen in a build as well. So very, very, very impressive. So there are a couple of things that I don't like that I've already pointed out, so I'm not going to drill into them too much, but I feel like some of these utilities and city services have been a little bit haphazardly placed. So we've got this, for instance, this inland eco water treatment plant. And if we look at our land uses, got this by a church, some commercial, and then some residential. I just don't really love that. That's not the way that you would see it in a community. You might see it on a very small scale, but as the community would start to grow, they would look for a place on the outskirts of town or in a fairly isolated area with room to grow. And I think that that is what we would anticipate to see here, not having this within a residential area. And you kind of see those throughout. Right here, we've got a fire helicopter depot right in the middle of the university. So I don't love that. That said, that's a minor grievance. I'm going to give this a 4.5 out of 5 for city service coverage. And next up, while we're at the university, let's take a look at unique features. So this is a place where the build absolutely shines. So here's the university, and I love how this looks. They've got some parking ramps built in here. Rather than having a sea of parking, let's just add a couple of ramps and zoom in here, public transit. So really a nice looking campus. It feels natural and organic in here, but this is not really the star of the show. I think the star of the show is if you come over here and take a look at this. So turn these on. This is Delta Eastern Agritech. So not only is it a tech campus, they've got some research buildings in here. It's also a farm. We have one of these in my area, and this is exactly how it looks. There are little test beds and plots where you could try growing some local things. You'd work with farmers, send some of the researchers out there, and try some of these hybrid crops that they're building when they're selectively breeding the seeds. This is really an outstanding idea. I would have never thought to put anything like this together, and I'm really impressed by it. Not just the idea, but the execution on that idea, that it works as well as it does. So very outstanding. The other thing I want to point out with this is that there are lots of little parks through here that are really unique. Like taking this and having a nice little park in here, wonderful. One of my favorites over here, they've created this little park. It looks like it's some sort of military remembrance park, and it offers striking views of the bay. And look at the utilization. People obviously love this park, and I think adding this highway exit made it even busier. So a huge tourist draw here, and all of the parks are like that. Just lots of detail, and you can tell that they started vanilla with some of these and started to add on. The beach, it's very lively, a lot of things happening here. One of my favorite parks is actually one of the simplest. So right here, it's right in the middle of a neighborhood, preserved this area to walk through. I could imagine this being a landfill, and having this happen, or just being a natural high point that the city had the foresight to preserve. Just really, really nice use of the assets. This would be a community gem. I could see these being some of the most expensive lots in the city as people want to live near this amenity. And I could also see there being a path up here, truthfully. So that would be one thing that I might think of adding. But just in general, with the unique features, very good. Look at this animal sanctuary. So excellent use of the quay walls, excellent use of landscaping, excellent mixing of assets from different parks. You don't have to say this is a zoo, so we're going to stick with just zoo amenities. You can throw in some city park amenities, and you can really go wild with your landscaping and make it feel special. One of the things I like the most about this, though, is look at their use of bike facilities through here. They've elevated this so that you could walk underneath it. You could bike through here. That'd be really a striking view. You come through, you're able to look right into the zoo as you come on down. Nice bike ride. Nice thought there. Really excellent thought process with this. The other thing, I pointed this out a little bit, they've added some unique features like churches, which really make the building shine, the builds shine. And then if we pop in here and we look at their use of unique buildings, you're going to see there are a lot of them, but I'm okay with it. So the concentration of the unique buildings is in the downtown area, and this is 100,000-ish sims, so I'm good with it. But a lot of what you're seeing here is that it's very tastefully chosen amenity or assets. So right here we have the city arch. Good with that. We've got the Mall of Moderation. We've got a couple of small parks over here. Obviously, we're working in some of these amenities near the university. And then what a lot of these are little monuments and things of that nature, and churches. We've got some of the Japanese cities creator pack assets. And then right here, this would likely be a design competition, and to give it its own park, fill it in, really feels outstanding. Just an excellent job here of working these in, making it feel very good. Again, another church right here. So those are the sorts of things that I think are missing in the game, and to use your unique buildings to add to the game in that way makes a ton of sense to me. So I really like what they've done here. I'm gonna get a little nitpicky and say that, you know, that there are some things that, you know, I'm a little curious about the location of, that I've mentioned before, such as just placing some of these unique amenities near utilities, but it's really outstanding. So for unique features, we're gonna give them a 4.5 out of 5. And finally, we're gonna take a look at the aesthetics of the build. And I think that they have really done an excellent job, very tasteful use of detailing, and I'm really digging this build. So first of all, I really want to point out what they've done here. Every single street that I've found has had some sort of name, or maybe not all of them, but most of them. So Sycamore Avenue, you know, Harbor Street, these all line up with the transit routes, Gulf Shore Drive. They've given thought to these, given it a place. It gives it a sense of place when you do that. So I wish I was better about this. Gulfstream Road, just lots and lots of thought. And they've also pandered to me, which I also appreciate. So we come over here, City Planner Place. I'm gonna give a half a point for that alone. So if you're submitting a city and you pander to me, you might get a half point. You never know. But there's just a lot of thought into this particular build, even as far as the bridges go, giving some different looks to the bridges. One of the things that I noticed right off the bat, they wanted a very unique feel here. So they used Content Creator Pack bridges here, but then switched it up to the vanilla bridge so that they could have these bridge arches here, which I have no problem with. I think it makes a unique bridge, some thought going into the aesthetics there. So very good job with that. And you just dive in and you see so much going on. My one critique here is that sometimes less is more. And what you'll see a lot here is that these parks just have a lot going on. So this kind of builds on the previous feedback. Lots of great parks, but there's just a lot. And I think that some of these, you know, you have all of this detail, it kind of gets drowned out when you have too much in these parks. So right here, I'd love to see just half of the amount of stuff, and it might feel a bit better. Because part of the park is also having some breathing room, a place to stretch out. I think one of the best examples is over here in Delta Park. There's just a lot of stuff, and it can start to feel a little bit cluttered. So removing some of these buildings, you don't need gazebos everywhere. You can just kind of spread it out. It works in some places to dramatic effect. I think that this makes sense. Constrained environment. You want to keep getting all those animals in your sanctuary. It's a sanctuary, so you're wanting to save these animals, so you want to have as many in there as possible. But that's not necessarily the case with some of the other parks and some of the other unique amenities through here. I just spread things out. Kind of the exact same thing I said with land use. And kind of the one critique I have about the build in general is it's very dense, and I don't know that it has to be, because there's still plenty of room to grow out. So spreading some of these things out would be of great value to the entire build. But in general, this much thought, this much detailing, just absolutely outstanding. And I would give this a 4, but I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5 for pandering. And with that, I need a quick drum roll, please, because we are ready for our City Planner City Score. 30 out of 35, putting this at the very top. This is an excellent build. You put this much detail, this much thought, and this much time into your build, and you're gonna get an excellent result. This is an absolutely gorgeous city. I love this. I think that what they've done here is really outstanding. So obviously you guys know that I'm very well acquainted with this builder. I wasn't at the time that I put this together. So obviously, you know, Marstannum is a moderator in the Discord. He's a patron. He helped us with the 3060 Ti giveaway contest. But that's not why I picked this build. In fact, I didn't know who put this together. I have a folder in my Google Drive of all of the different builds, and I was thumbing through, and I stopped at this one. So excellent photography skills. That's one thing. But number two, the build is just so unique and well put together, and it was clear to see from the imagery. And as I dive into this, it's just very clear to me that this is one of the most well thought out builds that I've taken a look at so far. So the critiques and criticisms aren't really criticisms at all. It's really critiques that you'd love to see a little bit more in terms of that transportation network, and potentially giving a little bit more relief and a little bit more space. But in general, what a phenomenal build. Really excellent job. The same thing I will mention to all the creators. If they take any of the feedback that I've provided and decide to make any changes, let me know. Maybe we'll put together a 5-10 minute video looking at how things have improved. Excellent build. You really couldn't do better in my mind. So with that, I hope that you liked this video. If you did, hit the like button. If you aren't subscribed, please consider doing so. And please, down in the comments, give them a huge round of applause for this. Very, very, very cool build. Let's have a brief city tour, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.